I'd like to give my impressions of how I see things at the moment. It's a changing feast. I wrote this earlier in the day, and since then I've listened to the witness testimony of Edward Zoll and Matt Scull from TruNews, and it's confirmed just about everything that I wrote. So here goes. I would like to go back and have a look at Matt Scull and Edward Zoll's live coverage of the demonstration in Washington, D.C. It showed mostly an overwhelmingly peaceful crowd. And another report that I heard said that the demographic was of people aged mostly between the ages of 40 and 70. And an image that is etched into my memory is people erecting a Christian cross in front of the Capitol building. So that contrasts with the images from spring or summer last year from Washington, D.C. as well, of marauding and violent Black Lives Matter and Antifa mobs burning things down, including trying to set St. John's Church on fire and surrounding the White House. Back then, Trump wanted to bring in the National Guard, but then Secretary of Defense Mark Esper and General Milley defied their commander-in-chief and refused. And back then, Trump issued an executive order taking action against people who defile national monuments, and I hear today that that's going to be used against the Trump people who broke into the Capitol building. So anyway, that was the day that TruNews Rick Wiles marked as the end of the Republic. He said then that there had been a coup and that the coup has been ongoing. So after that, the coup was constant and unrelenting. It was a coup against the leader, but it was also a coup against the Democratic Republic and against the people, or at least 50% of the people. So back to recent events. There was a huge crowd of perhaps between 500,000 and 1 million. They came in peacefully because they'd been asked to by their president, who promised that it would be wild. I started my day on the 6th with Trump's speech, where he laid out yet again what everyone in the crowd already knew, that the election had been stolen. He said at the end, let's march down together to the Capitol and I'll meet you there. What I missed, because I wasn't watching early enough, was Rudy Giuliani and Don Trump Jr. were stirring up the crowd with fighting words. But when the crowd reached their goal, there was no sign of Trump. Apparently he was watching the whole show on the telly. So the crowd that had travelled to Washington from as far away as Alaska with money they did not have were left leaderless, rudderless. Everyone TruNews interviewed, and they were perhaps the only news outlet there on the ground, or at least on the Capitol steps, said that they were looking for leadership and guidance as to what they should do next. They would do what their president asked them to do next, but their president was watching them on the telly. I've since heard from Edward Zoll that people were walking away during the speech because they were angry at Trump for that very reason. And he thought that they were walking away because they were cold. Anyway, the next thing that happened, for whatever reason, having racked them up was that Trump told his people who had invested everything to go home peacefully. Well, I wonder how those people are feeling now. Pretty bloody angry, I think. And Trump is not a Bashar Assad who has stated, a captain doesn't think about death or life, but about saving his ship and possibly going down with it. Not Trump, who's a narcissist and without honour. My suspicion, if he's not arrested, is that he will flee to Israel to join another traitor whom he recently pardoned. But he's not unique. The same goes for the entire swamp. There's not an ounce of honour on any of them in either party. They're all pigs with their snouts in the trough while they throw their people to the dogs. This is truly a war of the swamp against the people, and I'm afraid it's getting uglier. So, who had the idea to climb over the barriers that were manned by at best, a token police presence is unclear. There was certainly some resistance here at the actual steps, but the question has to be asked when everyone was expecting fireworks was, why was this such a token protection of what was supposed to be one of the most protected buildings in the world? There are scenes of doors being opened and people being shown through. Still others of people being beckoned through. There are also signs that the crowd was so peaceful and law-abiding that apparently they kept inside the marked barriers, and that's the majority. But as with any crowd, there was chaos, something clearly shown in the footage from Matt Scow and Edward Soul. In the melee, the two were separated and Matt found himself carried inside the building in what they describe as a vortex. So I've since heard a truly shocking testimony as just the energy that was abroad at the time. But so chaos, yes, but violence, well, yeah. A lot of the footage I've seen indicates that there wasn't, and that's generally true. But for sure there was violence, and not only from agents provocateurs. There were numerous reports of people who were not like the mass of Trump supporters. One witness reported seeing people dressed in dark orange hats who they later saw breaking windows, and Edward Soul reported seeing someone in a mask. When asked to take it off, he refused. They actually talked about this in some detail on their broadcast today, and it's not pretty. There's more than a hint of the presence of agents provocateurs who acted violently and broke windows and so forth, and tried to goad the people into violent acts. This is what agents provocateurs do, and it's well nigh impossible to prove, or would be, were it not for cell phones and Twitter. People can work things out in hours now, where in the past it might have taken years to find out. Imagine if they'd had cell phones and the internet back in 1963 when JFK was assassinated. So there's certainly more than a hint that what we saw was a false flag, or there were elements of a false flag designed to further an agenda to get the people used to the idea that democracy is something in the past, to get them used like frogs in boiling water, to get them used to tyranny and dictatorship. But at this stage, it's so chaotic it's really hard to get where the truth lies. But despite what people have reported, the mostly peaceful crowd has been described by the media and the Democrats as a violent mob and even as internal terrorists. So that's what we're being prepared for. So the very real anarchists and terrorists were earlier described as mostly peaceful and were allowed to burn things down and beat folk up with scarcely any resistance, and the police were told to stand down. Just remember the reports right through the summer, night after night, especially in Portland, Oregon, and Seattle. But when a mostly peaceful crowd, in the true sense of the word, were left rudderless after being worked up by the leader, entered the capital, chaotic but still mostly peaceful, are described as terrorists. Is there something wrong here? It's early days still, and there are many indications that this event, which might be described as a false flag to usher in the latest iteration of the move towards a globalist fascist tyranny. It is the opinion of people I trust, and it's my impression as well. I believe that this is but the beginning and is not only going to affect just America, but will reverberate around the world as the globalists who would rule over us adopt the China way. So all I can say is brace for impact. I would now like to share just a short portion of the witness testimony of Edward Zoll and Matt Scull from TruNews. And well, this is a witness account. They're saying exactly what they experienced, what they saw, and what they heard. So so unless you're so ideologically driven and blind, you'll listen to this with an open mind.
There was a riot that Donald Trump whipped up for his benefit.
And he didn't even bother showing up for it.
And he didn't bother to be there to lead it. He used his supporters. I know that upsets a lot of Trump people, but it's the truth. He used his supporters.
Yeah, when he said, I'll go on Pennsylvania and march with me.
He said, I'm going to march and I'll meet you there.
He said, we will go up Pennsylvania. We will go to the Capitol. We will be there.
And I'll meet you there.
We walked with them. They were angry.
Yeah. So Matt and Edward were there. They saw this. I mean, this isn't hearsay. This isn't, speculation. These guys were physically there.
So you walked Pennsylvania Avenue.
We interviewed them.
And what were they saying?
We want action. We are pissed off, and we're going to take our country back. Physically. This wasn't like we're going to go over there and sit down and have a protest where we lock arms. And that would have probably been better to do for a 30-day sit-in and not let anybody up the Capitol steps. But it was angry.
So the Trump supporters who left the rally at the Ellipse and then walked Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol, did they have the mindset that they were just going to the Capitol to have another rally?
Oh, absolutely not.
Really?
Their mindset was to hold lawmakers accountable.
How?
And many
What were
were
they
saying they were
thinking?
going to storm the building.
They were saying it?
They were already saying it as they were walking up. And people were saying treason has been committed. We have to take back our country with blood. And the amount of things we heard walking up, it wasn't a foreign concept when people got to the Capitol to go into it, because people were already in that mindset that they were going to storm that building, a building they believed was theirs.
And where did they get the idea to march to the Capitol and storm the Capitol?
President Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Lynn Wood.
Donald J. Trump Jr.
Look, they're gaslighting people, saying like, of course it was stolen. Of course, and then people are like, yeah, we know this. We've heard this speech before. We want action. It was time. That speech that he gave was the Georgia speech 2 days ago. They hear him.
Did you hear people say,
okay,
we've heard this stuff before, what are we supposed to do?
How many have we been to? Dozens of these, right?
50 plus rallies.
I was at this gate where I couldn't get anymore, where the VIPs were sitting, right? I've been to so many of these. No one leaves they were leaving while he was speaking, and I was like,
the VIPs.
Yeah, I was like, where are you guys going? Because we've heard this before. We've heard this before, and they are leaving. They wanted them to tell them to do something. The crowd wanted, we've heard this before. Tell us what to do.
Were they shouting that?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Tell us what to do.
At one point of time, President Trump, during the speech, actually addressed the amount of people that were leaving the enclosed VIP area. He said, people are just weak. You know, it's cold, I got it. You know, I have to give this speech. I know it's going to be a little long, but I need to detail the evidence. But at the beginning and the end, he said, we're going to march to the Capitol, and we're going to put pressure on the lawmakers.
And so those people, the only instruction they heard that day was march to the Capitol. And the president was going to walk with them and meet them at the Capitol.
Don Jr. was like, fight. I mean, the rhetoric. Yes, I feel that same passion. I want something. I don't want evil to win. I don't want fraudulent elections to occur. But when you send that, there's 100,000 people marching on the Capitol without any instructions. That's going to happen. The fever was, they wanted blood. They wanted to show that they were going to stand up for their country, and you know, some innocent people died because of this.
Now, in the Trump movement and
yes,
a police officer.
Yes.
The overwhelming majority of people there were peaceful. So we're not saying everybody was involved in this.
Yes.
Of course not. But how many people were actually in the Capitol building?
Let's back it up. Okay. How many people do you think walked to the Capitol?
100,000. I mean,
it could be up to 100,000.
It was.
Really?
Because what I saw was the majority of people at the rally, back by the Washington Monument, was where the bulk of people were. They didn't disperse there. They started marching to the Capitol as soon as the rally had come.
How many of them arrived at the Capitol?
Look, the whole, if you've ever been to Washington, and that hill is big. Yes. It was full, like shoulder to shoulder.
Waves of Trump supporters and flags.
They all marched on the Capitol. And then we got there when people had already breached into the Capitol. They came out.
First or second wave already been inside the building.
They came out, and it was like.
By the time you guys got there, they had already entered the Capitol building?
The first person, we saw people scaling the walls, and I was like, wow, what a amazing sight that is. I go around to the other side. We hit this guy, two guys, full-on military outfit, maced, shot with paintballs. They're like, yeah, they're shooting at us. We're trying to fight back. We go or walk around, and all the steps to Congress is filled with people. But they were like singing Star Spangled Banner. It was like, wow, this is good. We get closer to the door of Congress that has already been smashed in. And me, Ed, and our cameraman, we get close right there to the door. And then the mob starts pushing us. And I'm in the mob. I'm holding on to Nick's hand, say, hold on to me. And then right when we get to the door, I get pulled in by a police officer when he's trying to shut the door to stop the crowd.
A police officer pulled you into the building.
He was right around me.
Into the Capitol.
Came with him. And then if you saw our live view, you see like here, Matt. And it was me sucked into the void. Boom, the door was shut. I see them.
It's like going out with a tide. You can't stop it.
It was literally thousands of people, hundreds of people pushing you. So I'm in there then, and I see Nick and Ed through the window, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Then I get pushed into the rotunda with the crowd, and it becomes a tug of war battle of pushing in and out, in and out. It was waves of the police winning. Then it was at some point they must have opened the door because there was a big push into the rotunda where that's where I was. I found like a little bench, and I stood on top of the bench and just started recording it.
So that was actually at the below ground entrance. There's two main entrances which were stormed. That one is in the front when we first came up. There's a bottom part that you can come to, and that's where I believe they were trying to breach through. We were at the front door to the building. But
I wanted people to see the power of a crowd, a mob is pushing.
You're literally submitted to the will of the crowd. You can't change where you're at. The policeman was being crushed. And he couldn't yell to anyone other than screaming out loud.
I was helping people. A woman fell down. There was reports like a few people died. I don't know.
Trampled.
There was a woman trampled. Did you?
Yeah, I helped one woman. She was getting trampled, and we helped get her out. I don't know where. It's so crazy in there, Rick. I saw a police officer getting hit in the head. They were shooting paintballs at people. It was just insanity.
Utter chaos.
Donald Trump did this.
He told people to go there.
Donald Trump needs to resign today. Today. I'm fed up with Trump. He needs to resign today. He did that mess. That's the reality of it. He told those people, go to the Capitol. He knew what they were going to do. In his warped mind, he wanted a confrontation. He's so desperate to hold on to power that he was willing to provoke people to acts of violence in order for him to stay in power. That is the truth. He didn't say, now, folks, we're going to go up to the Capitol, we're going to have a peaceful sit-in,
yes,
and we're going to stay there, and we're not leaving. We're going to be peaceful, and, we're just going to have an old-fashioned peaceful sit-in for days until the Congress, investigates our claims of fraud.
You probably would have drawn in millions of other people to that kind of event.
That would have been a powerful action if he just said, we're going to sit here on the sidewalk, on the steps of the Capitol. We're going to sit here for days until Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell have a serious hearing about our allegations of fraud.
A proper investigation. And I'll tell you, the speech was very telling. I heard for the first time Rudy Giuliani admit they had no evidence. What he said is, we need a proper investigation to show what we suspect took place.
What we suspect.
What we suspect. And this is the thing. This is absolutely true. You can't name one single person by name who voted for President Trump and has switched to Joe Biden. That is a fact. And it's a tough fact. Yeah. I've had to admit, okay, can I name one person? Just one. Not 10, not 100, not a million. Just one person that voted for President Trump and their vote was switched.
Well, we don't
know. We don't know.
They haven't done an audit yet. We don't know.
That's what I'm saying. There was never an actual investigation. You got to think now, what was Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood and all these other people doing? They can't even name one person.
Well, there's no doubt something happened with this election, but there was no leadership with that mob that was sent to the Capitol building. There was no leadership saying, go there, sit there, hold hands, sing Kumbaya, we're going to stop this. It was just go there and fight.
Matt, the reports, if they're accurate, is that President Trump went back to the White House and sat there and watched all of it on TV.
Yeah. What would have been great is if he would have showed up and gave some leadership.
How could he sit in the White House and realize my people are destroying the Congress?
Yeah, and was there provocateurs? Of course there were. There's no doubt. We saw a man dressed in complete, like a silver leotard with a pyramid on his head, saying, bring them out, string them up, execute traitors, with a bullhorn. Yeah. I followed this guy for like 5 minutes. Good for some of the people, and me and Edward were amongst them, say, show your face then, coward. You want to say execute traitors and hype up this mass of humanity here, and patriots were saying, show your face if you believe that. No, he's over there with his bullhorn.
But what were they doing? What were those patriots doing in there? What were they expecting to accomplish by going inside the Capitol?
And the truth, I've realized this kind of amulets in my head. That man with the covered face was saying exactly what Lynn Wood was saying publicly. Think about that.
True.
Lynn Wood was saying what that man was saying. Okay, so it's not as if
Lynn Wood last week said execute Mike Pence.
Yes.
Lynn Wood said that people are blackmailed who rape kids and shoot them on camera.
And he had an encryption key with the evidence.
Well, it's time for that to be shown. It is. I was disgusted of what I saw there because it did nothing. It accomplished nothing. It really hurt the people who want to get this election squared away and find out what happened. Now everybody who is a Trump supporter is a terrorist.
Not only that, but anybody who ever questions the veracity of election results will be branded a domestic terrorist.
Yes, that's going to happen. It's happening now. I mean, if you question the veracity of the election now, you're going to be, tagged as a domestic terrorist, because only a domestic terrorist would question the veracity
Believe
of
in
an
conspiracy theories and accuse people of rigging elections.
I interviewed a woman who had a Jesus Saves sign. I say, Ed was like, what would Jesus do? She goes, well, he fights for injustice, but he doesn't smash windows.
I asked her if he would storm the Capitol, and she said yes.
We confronted a man. We were right there after we got out finally, and I hear a bang, bang. I look over there. This guy has some kind of metal object smashing a window. We confront him. Hey, stop doing that. What are you doing? We don't need that. He sneaks away, and Edward's like, show your face, because he had a mask that had vegan on it.
So that was actually at the below ground entrance. There's two main entrances which were stormed. That one is in the front when we first came up. There's a bottom part that you can come to, and that's where I believe they were trying to breach through. We were at the front door to the building, but
I wanted people to see the power of a crowd, a mob is pushing.
You're literally submitted to the will of the crowd. You can't change where you're at. The policeman was being crushed. And he couldn't yell to anyone other than screaming out loud.
I was helping people. A woman fell down. There was reports like a few people died. I don't know.
Trampled.
There was a woman trampled. Did you?
Yeah, I helped one woman. She was getting trampled, and we helped get her out. I don't know where. It's so crazy in there, Rick. I saw a police officer getting hit in the head. They were shooting paintballs at people. It was just insanity.
Utter chaos.
Yeah, and was there provocateurs? Of course there were. There's no doubt. We saw a man dressed in complete, like a silver leotard with a pyramid on his head, saying, "Bring them out, string them up, execute traitors," with a bullhorn. Yeah. I followed this guy for like 5 minutes. Good for some of the people. And me and Edward were amongst them. Say, "Show your face, then, coward." You want to say execute traitors and hype up this mass of humanity here, and patriots were saying show your face if you believe that.
I just wish to read something from the Seeker, from the vineyard of the Seeker. He wrote this actually on the 6th of January. I just listened to Trey Gowdy and a few other GOP big shots condemn the terrible violations of the law committed by the protesters today, and I take my hat off to these folks. They are truly world-class hypocrites. When cops and mayors refuse to protect the innocent, the rule of law is doing great. When the letter soup agencies spend millions on a typical witch hunt, the rule of law is doing great. When the First Amendment is being destroyed by big tech, the rule of law is doing great. When the corporate legacy Zio Media brazenly silences the president and simply does not report on crucial events, the rule of law is doing great. When elections are stolen, the rule of law is doing great. When the courts refuse to enforce the law, the rule of law is doing great. When the Supreme Court refuses to defend the Constitution, the rule of law is doing great. But when the people, literally those whom the elected officials are supposed to represent, demonstrate all day peacefully, and then a few, not necessarily even Trump supporters, false flags are very easy to organize with crowds, storm the halls of Congress, then the GOP big shots take to the air and lament the tragedy of the law being violated. No country and no regime can stand on such truly galactic levels of double-think, hypocrisy and cowardice. And then the next sentence is in red. This is the beginning of the end of this regime. And he goes on, my thoughts tonight are with the deplorables in the prophetic word of George Orwell. If there was hope, it must lie with the proles, because only there, in those swarming, disregarded masses, 85% of the population of Oceania, could the force to destroy the party ever be generated. The party could not be overthrown from within. Its enemies, if it had any enemies, had no way of coming together or of even identifying one another. Even the legendary brotherhood existed. Even if the legendary brotherhood existed, as just possibly it might, it was inconceivable that its members could ever assemble in larger numbers than twos or threes. Rebellion meant a look in the eyes, an inflection of the voice, at most an occasional whispered word. But the proles, if only they could somehow become conscious of their own strength, would have no need to conspire. They need only to rise up and shake themselves like a horse shaking off fleas. If they chose, they could blow the party to pieces tomorrow morning. Surely, sooner or later, it must occur to them to do it. Orwell's proles are deplorables, and for all the self-evident weaknesses and delusions, they are the only ones left, literally, and they will have to be the soil from which the liberation of the USA will have to begin. The rest of them make me feel nauseated. The Seeker.